Keep Right with Ralph K. Ginorio. The listener may recall that when they took civics in high school, our Constitution had set up a separation of powers in government designed to prevent tyranny, patterned on the Roman Republic and honed by the Enlightenment philosopher Montesquieu. This separation was intended to prevent any one official or faction from acquiring the power to unconstitutionally impose its will upon a free people. Our government has three levels: municipal and county, in other words, local, the state power, and federal power. Each has different responsibilities. For example, the policing powers that enforce most laws are reserved for the states and are not the province primarily of the federal government. Giving law enforcement to the various states is also, like almost everything else in our Constitution, intended to avert tyranny by strictly limiting those occasions when the federal government prosecutes its own citizens. Consider just how far we've strayed from this vision over the past century and more. The federal government itself is divided into three branches. In simplest terms, the legislative branch, that's Congress, makes the laws, and the executive branch, that is the president, enforces the laws, while the judicial branch, the federal courts, interpret the laws and their meaning. Nothing significant can be done by any one branch without the cooperation of the other two branches. All of this was done because our founding fathers were utterly suspicious of the propensity of governments to prey upon their own citizens. Each founder was a traitor to his rightful king and empire because he felt called to defend Enlightenment principles of inalienable human rights and popular sovereignty, even against his own rulers. Our founders knew bone deep the ever-present danger that even the most well-intentioned government poses to any concept of liberty. No government ever has been comfortable voluntarily acknowledging finite limits to the scope of its own authority. By their very nature, governments resist recognizing that anything is transcendent or beyond their purview. Add this to the ubiquitous tendency of governments everywhere to intrude constantly and expand their scope. Left unchecked, government dictates tend to eventually encompass all forms of citizen choice. Governments are hungry to consume the liberty of its citizens in the name of protecting them, even from themselves. At best, government is like fire, steam power, guns, or nuclear fission. Its power can, when controlled, improve life. Uncontrolled, it constitutes a clear and present danger to every citizen. Unfortunately, the civics curriculum on the separation of powers has since been updated. Today, there is in effect a fourth branch of federal rule, with powers at least as potent as any of the three constitutional branches: the permanent federal bureaucracy, what is often termed the administrative state or the deep state, now commands a vast scope of control over the American people. Ostensibly a part of the executive branch, federal bureaucracies have taken on a permanency and opacity that renders them largely invulnerable to outside pressure. These structures are Byzantine, with official organizational charts bearing little resemblance to the actuality of informal influence. Staffed by those who score highest on civil service exams and augmented by experts from academe, industry, law enforcement, and the military, federal agencies attract very ambitious, very well-educated, and very hard-working employees. With good reason, these individuals take pride in their professional accomplishments and in the grave responsibilities with which they are entrusted. Most of the time, these American apparatchiks give good service to our republic. Unfortunately, though, Shakespeare was right about power, absolute power, corrupting absolutely. Because these agencies operate with increasingly less effective oversight by political appointees appointed by successive presidential administrations, the permanent bureaucracy itself has taken on an independent life of its own. Our administrative state now constitutes an unelected and unconstitutional regulatory authority that wields broad powers with no accountability to the people through their elected representatives. By their cooperation or obstruction, this federal bureaucracy can make or break the ambitions of presidents, Supreme Court justices, senators, and congressmen. Even state officials such as governors and municipal officials such as mayors are vulnerable to the prejudices of federal bureaucrats. Colluding with their allies in the media, academe, K-12 education, labor unions, the courts, law enforcement, the military, and woke corporations, the permanent bureaucracy serves itself. Like a parasite or a cancer, federal agencies have become ends unto themselves rather than means to ensure the liberty and security of American citizens. It is this unaccountable Leviathan that is fighting Trump with every fiber of its being. These high achievers have come to see themselves as a natural aristocracy who have every right to rule over the rest of us, of course, for our own good. Either citizens will break the power of this deep state, or we will abandon any pretense that we still rule ourselves. Who rules in the United States? It cannot continue to be both the people and the bureaucracy. It must either be us or them. Fellow citizens, join me in striving so that the answer might be us.